Glad you're with us here at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Final practice, final adjustments, final tune-ups on track prior to tomorrow's 301-lap race. Temperature mid-70s, beautiful day here in New England. Qualifying was washed out yesterday, but we've already had one practice this morning. And this is final on-track activity until tomorrow's race. Hi, everybody. Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, Jeff Hammond, back with you. Larry, the first practice.
We never went away.
We didn't.
But the weather report changed. The weather report changed.
Some unusual names at the top of that timing and scoring list in the first practice.
Yeah, I know we have to be careful when we look at a practice sheet, especially getting ready to race at a place like here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. But we saw Sorensen, we saw Truex, we saw Nemechek, we saw Casey Mears. Not names that we normally see at the top of any practice sheet, but I've got to believe that a lot of the guys that are going to be fast, they were not able to run that fast lap. They're fast on a long run. But the one thing that alarmed me, when you think back to the first 16 races, the Achilles heel for Roush Fenway was these flatter, shorter racetracks. And in that first practice, Roush Fenway only had one car even in the top 20, and that was Carl Edwards in the 99 car. I still think they've got work to do at these type of racetracks with the Roush Fenway cars.
And Jeff, as you've noted so well, teams always come to every racetrack, but New Hampshire, maybe perhaps more so with a game plan of the weekend. It's a very deceptively fast track.
It's a very deceptively fast racetrack, and you think about, going this racetrack at over 150 miles an hour down in the corners. You got to have good brakes. You got to get the car to work well. And we talk about what we've been watching all weekend long, the agendas. I think in this final practice, I look for some of the teams that ran a lot of laps, like Kurt Busch, Jimmy Johnson. If their cars are working well, I think they'll go out and make a maybe 20, 25 lap run. I wouldn't be one bit surprised if they quit a little bit early, because if they get close, they don't want to die themselves out chasing a racetrack. But I think they went through a lot of the preliminary stuff already.
I mentioned that qualifying was rained out yesterday. We had a brief but heavy thunder shower roll through here. That means we're going to line up per the NASCAR rulebook and by owner points. So Tony Stewart starts from the pole position.
Yeah, this 48 car, they have not been bashful about laps since they unloaded yesterday. They ran 49 laps in that first practice this morning. Yesterday, they ran about 61 laps. So in two practices, they've already run over 100 laps of practice.
Yeah, and again, I really think that if Chad Knaus gets this thing where he wants it, I don't look for him to do a whole lot of running, making any more long runs than he needs to in his 48 car.
But Jeff, we've talked about it. We're in the 10 race to the chase.
Race to the chase.
And when the chase starts in 10 races, it's right back here. The 48 car coming in here third in the points. They've got to feel pretty good. They're going to make the chase. And I think even more so now this year with the no testing policy, that these guys are trying to gather as much information as they can, especially at chase racetracks where they've just got more data and more information when they come back here in mid-September.
Are you trying to say it's time to get down to the nitty-gritty?
And this is about the time of the year the 48 normally does it.
And Jeff, you had a great point in practice yesterday. And that is, quite frankly, if you're one of those guys at top 4 in points, like a Tony Stewart, you can experiment a little bit for the chase when it comes back here in September. But then you have other guys who are trying to cement a position in the chase.
And what I'm saying about that right there, Steve, is come up here. Maybe you got a set of spindles. Maybe you got a little bit different geometry package. You'd like to go with a shock and spring combination. And the only way you're going to find out how it really works, and Larry, I think, will back me up on this. A lot of times, even when you go to a test, you get a feel for something. But the only way you really know that it works is you got to run it. You got to run, 200, 300 laps under it. Put some serious, time on the racetrack and competition to really know whether or not the product works. So for a lot of these teams, I think it's a great opportunity for them to kind of experiment. If you're a guy like Mark Martin or Carl Edwards, you might want to say, I don't think we need to be experimenting. We need to try to get close, keep it close all weekend. I don't want to crawl out here on the limb. Let one of my teammates go do it.
Well, you think about it, Jimmy Johnson's third in the points. He's pretty good shape. Carl Edwards is 5th in the points. But that 5 car, or Mark Martin, a lot like Kyle Busch in the 18 car. Kyle Busch is 9th in the points. Mark Martin is 11th in the points. And Mark Martin is only 12 points to the good inside the top 12 right now.
You mentioned the last 4 races have been a bit of a struggle for Kyle Busch by his standards. You see him right behind Mark Martin. Kyle finished 23rd, 22nd, 13th, and 22nd again last weekend at the Infinity Infineon Raceway in Sonoma.
Well, right now that Mark Martin car is looking pretty darn fast. He's right there in front of Kyle Busch. Jimmy Johnson's put the fastest lap down so far in this early part of this final practice, followed by Mark Martin. Kevin Harvick just jumped up there, but a lot of these guys are making long lap runs. I'm already seeing several cars, including Jimmy Johnson's, run over 5 laps right on the get.
Who's fast right now? Who maybe put fresh tires on to start this practice? And maybe who started this practice on tires they ended the first practice with?
Tony Stewart, 2 Cup wins here in New Hampshire. He also won the Nationwide Series race last year. He also had an IRL race win here back in '98, I believe.
You know, Tony held a press conference yesterday in the media center, as all of the top 12 drivers do each and every week at the racetrack on Friday. And there was a lot of questions thrown at him now that I think we're halfway through 2009. The possibility of a 3rd team for Stewart Haas Racing in 2010. And Tony was very blunt. He feels like the team is ready for a 3rd team, but it absolutely has all to do with funding, sponsorship. If they get the sponsorship, they get the funding, then they'll look harder at it.
Martin Truex Jr., the 1 car, has posted the quickest lap in this practice. He's followed by Jimmy Johnson, Mark Martin, and Kevin Harvick. Stay with us here in New Hampshire. Final practice continues here in New Hampshire. Michael Waltrip in the 55 car, just behind Dale Earnhardt Jr. Michael took himself out of his own car last weekend in Infineon Raceway. Patrick Carpentier competed on the road course. Let's go to Ralph Shaheen.
You know, Steve, one of the things the guys are going to be working on hard to get good balance on is with their brakes. And this is a brake pad from the front. This is a key component with this, because here's what happens. With the rear, if you get too much rear brake, the back end of the car gets loose on you. So you got to find the balance, because if you don't get enough rear brake, then you start to wear out these front brake pads, because the car noses down hard when you get into the corner and you get hard on the brakes. This is a racetrack that is very difficult on brakes, one of the toughest on the tour. You got to find a good balance between that front and the rear when it comes to your brakes. Now, one thing that does help these guys is the new car tomorrow, gentlemen, is easier on the brakes, especially in the rear, because of all that added downforce.
Yeah, it is a balancing act here, you know, and we're looking at the right front of the 55 car. And if you were watching our earlier practice session, there was a big question on Jeff and my mind.
30-28.
Why those rotors are glowing blue? We normally see them glowing red. Well, Marty Snyder, who was one of our reporters in the garage area, at the end of that first practice session after it was over, he went and talked to Joey Knuckles with Performance Friction that supplies a lot of brake pads and rotors for these race cars. And Joey said it's because that rotor is over 1,600 degrees, which honestly I think is too hot. You want to see rotor temperatures somewhere in the 12 to 1,400 degree range. That's the reason that we were told it's glowing blue instead of glowing red or orange.
So glowing blue is not a good thing.
If that indeed is the reason, 1,600 degrees, that's too hot, way too hot.
How did Jake Keller used to say it, the former crew chief? Something like that. Just mark him right off. If Mike keeps running that hot as far as those rotors are concerned, he'll have brake issues before the end of the day.
But I am very anxious to get in the garage area later on this afternoon or in the morning and talk to Booty Barker, the crew chief on that 55 car, and say, what is the deal with the blue rotors?
I think he's messing with your mind.
That's not hard to do.
Michael Waltrip just 35th overall. The quickest, that driver, Martin Truex Jr. in the 1 car.
And I think they have made a lot of gains with this car since yesterday. They were making race runs yesterday, and he just was not happy with the car. We interviewed him, we talked to him, and then I mentioned his name at the top of the show. He was 4th quickest in that first practice session, ran 28 laps, and now after running 10 laps, he's at the top of the charts. In this one,
water and oil.
What I'm interested in about this 1 car is he...
It's real bouncy getting in the corner. Just got to be real easy with it. It'll, I went 1 turn rear brake again because it would try to slide the nose.
So Martin Truex Jr. heads to the garage. We go to Matt.
And Steve, one driver who's always a threat here at the Magic Mile is the 24 of Jeff Gordon. 3 times he's gone to victory lane here, and he'll start 2nd tomorrow afternoon. Now, Gordon was top 15 in the first practice session. On the right side of the board during this session early on, his issue issue grip like so many others. Now they made some changes in the back of the race car and also some changes in the front of the race car. And I talked to a lot of different crew chiefs, and Jeff and Larry Mack, you've been in this situation. The first practice session, the track temperature ended. Now we are 6 degrees hotter starting this session than the first session. He said this is going to be the most opportune time to find out exactly what your package is, where you stand with it going into tomorrow's race. But Gordon, like so many others, fighting grip early on.
No question. This is the practice you better put stock in, because this is going to be more about the temperature, about the time of day that's going to be closer to when we get the green flag tomorrow in this 301 lap race.
Yeah, we got a lot of rubber on the racetrack between all the practice sessions, qualifying sessions have been ran here today. And again, the sun's been going in and out, but this, I think, is the most ideal time to be able to fine-tune your car. And again, if you get it close, you get it right, and you feel pretty confident about it, leave it alone.
I want to go back to something we heard Martin Truex Jr. as he was pulling in the garage area tell Kevin Mannion, his crew chief, and it almost goes right back to what Ralph was talking about. What you want to do is create just as much rear brake as you can, because when you've got as much rear brake as you can stand, it helps the car turn getting in the corner. You heard Martin say, I was tight getting in, so I was putting rear brake. You can do it with the adjuster, or you can do it with pad grip or even caliper size. But what you've got to be careful is don't step across the fence. The speed you carry in the corners, too much rear brake will actually get the car loose in.
On board with Kurt Busch as he sails down into turn 1. Of course, the defending champion of this event right now, Busch, 7th overall. You know, guys, I mentioned this yesterday. At this point last year, he was 22nd in the championship point standings. He comes in here 4th.
And I think one of the big reasons is about this time of last year, Pat Trice and Kurt Busch, shortly after this, they realized, you know what, we're not going to make the chase. We need to forget about the chase. Let's start sorting through things and figuring things out for 2009. And I think that paid dividends, considering they're in the top 5 in points, and they've been in the top 12 ever since the Daytona 500.
A couple of Chevrolets quickest here in this final practice for the Lenox Tools 301 tomorrow. Next week, Speed has 2 heart-pounding nights of wrecked. First, catch an all-new episode Thursday night at 10 Eastern, and then the action continues with a wrecked marathon Friday night beginning at 8 Eastern here on Speed.
Now, for all my buddies and friends and guys in the garage area that are texting me, tweeting me, all the things you do.
Are you Twittering?
I am Twittering. I've been Twittering for a while now. About the Blue Rotors, we're trying to get more information. That's the only information we've gotten so far, is the fact that it's because they're running such extreme heat on those rotors. We're going to get more information, I promise you.
But what are your tweets and your texts saying?
Just talking about my life, which pretty much is...
No. What are they saying to you about
that they're questioning, is that the reason they're blue?
Aha.
They want to know the truth, the whole truth,
and we're trying to
get
to the bottom of it, and we will.
Hey, speaking of the truth right now, guys, Juan Pablo Montoya got up in the top 12 last week as far as after a pretty good run at the Infineon, and now can he hang on? Here's another guy that had a great run at Infineon last week.
Marcus Ambrose
in the 47 car started dead last and wound up going all the way up to 3rd as far as that finish is concerned. And here's a guy who's looking to turn things around as far as this year is concerned. Wouldn't you say, Steve?
You know what, Jeff? While you were speaking about Dale Earnhardt Jr., I don't think he's been to the left of the timing and scoring monitor all weekend. He's just 29th overall right now.
Yeah, he was 28th in that first practice session.
Real tight in the center, and not a whole lot of grip on either end of the race car.
Well, it sounds like the key word of this practice session, or key words, is lack of grip. Why? The track is getting warmer and losing grip.
Casey Kane got his 10th career win last weekend on the road course.
And you know, everyone keeps asking us week in and week out, as we are down to 10 races to go to the chase, is who's going to be in the top 12, who's going to be out. Well, that's hard to say. But I just believe, when I look at this 9 car, the things they've been doing here lately, the things they're doing currently, I think this 9 car makes the chase. Right now, he's 13th, only 3 points out of the top 12. But the fact that they look like they're basically starting this week, with the exception of Daytona, full time with the new Dodge R6 engine. But I think the biggest thing, and Casey has said this, they're building me better, lighter race cars. That's the biggest difference. He didn't have the R6 engine last week at Infineon, but I think he had a great race car there.
Martin Truex Jr. still with the quickest lap. He's completed 14 laps.
And Steve, the thing is right now, we keep talking about quick laps. I mean, I know that's part of what we have to do up here, but that's not really what's important. It's those long runs. You've got to get this car to be able to work on the long run. I want to see a 10, 15, 20 lap run and be at the top of that chart. Then I'll feel like I've got a good car.
And right now we have a little scoring monitor up here that gives us the best 15 lap average, and our points leader in a backup car, Tony Stewart, in that 14 car, he's at the top of that chart. Jimmy Johnson's third on that lap average, but as far as best 10 lap average, there you see Jimmy Johnson and Tony Stewart at the top of that sheet.
And that's the one I want to be looking at. And Martin Truex Jr. in that one car, if he can lay down that fast lap and he can put together these 10 lap runs like this and make it go to a 20 lap run and be just as competitive, now you've got something. Now you can get excited about, you know, what your setup's all about.
We just saw that graphic. The top 3 all past New Hampshire winners. Martin Truex Jr., the quickest there in the one car. 4 straight top 10 finishes here.
And here's a guy I talked about at the top of the show, Casey Mears, in that 07 car. He ran a total of 28 laps in the first practice, and he was 3rd quickest as far as a fast lap. And in this practice, he's 14th quickest, and he's run a total of 12 laps. It just seems like now, after about 2 months with Todd Berrier and the old 29 team moving over to Casey, that I think this is starting to click. It's not maybe ready to win races, but it looks like it's maybe to start clicking off some top 10s, and which is what they need to be doing.
Well, getting back to what Jeff said about Dale Earnhardt Jr., you know, what that race team, what Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s fans want to see is progress. They want to see it going in the right direction. That is what is happening right now in that 07.
And one thing after we got off the air, I talked to Todd Berry just briefly, and Todd said, look, quit referring to me as a 29 car. I'm the 07 crew chief now, and we have the 07 team. You know, that's all history. Where I was at last week doesn't matter where I'm at because I'm here this week. You know, that's what his whole perception of this whole deal is that they put him together with Casey Mears, and his job is to make him the best driver possible, and it's working so far. It's making a change over there. As you said, Steve, that's what they're looking for, progress.
Casey Mears heads to the garage. We head to a break as you go into turn 1 with Denny Hamlin. Final practice continues. We're about 21 minutes in. Practice scheduled to be about an hour. Bobby Labonte in the Yates Ford.
Watching Bobby Labonte, and Jeff and I were just watching a couple of Roush Fenway cars go down pit road. Greg Biffle and Matt Kenseth, they were having a little fun going down pit road, kind of doing a little bump drag.
A little bumper tag right there going on.
Bobby Labonte's pretty quick right now, 8th overall. He's the fastest Ford. We go to the garage with Matt Yoakum.
And one driver in a fast Toyota, that is Marcos Ambrose in the 47, coming off a great momentum building run last week in Sonoma when he finished in the top 5. Currently, he's top 20 here. His biggest issue over the last run, he said, it feels like, and we'll have our crew chiefs really dissect this more and explain it more, but he feels like the right front loaded and the left rear unloaded. Now, what they've done is they've changed a left rear spring, and they've also made a wedge adjustment, and they're possibly going to make one more adjustment before he goes back out. But this team pretty strong here on the oval in New Hampshire.
And I think that's what Marcos Ambrose is wanting to be known for, as a good Sprint Cup Series driver, not just a good Sprint Cup Series road racer. And certainly he has shown a lot of bright spots here in 2009. There's those 2 teammates out there still
racing. They're
on
racing.
The racetrack.
Matt's really giving Greg a good run here during his practice session here. But this is what you need. You know, a couple of guys that feel very confident racing one another, putting pressure on the other guy, you know, trying to make him make a mistake, maybe watching his car, and when they come back in, they can talk about, what would you see? Well, I saw your car kind of like roll over here, or the left rear did this, or the left front did that. Drivers watch other drivers. And a lot of times when they come back to the garage area, what do? They tell you how another car looks. And they say, I want my car to look like that, or he's better than I am.
Of course, Greg Biffle won the last time we were here back in September. Now it possibly looks like I thought for once he was going to move over and kind of sum up his teammate Matt Kenseth, but I believe actually Greg's coming to the garage area.
Well, honestly, just watching this couple laps they ran, Greg's car didn't look as good as Matt Kenseth's car did, so I'm not surprised to see him pull off at 16 and go back to the garage area.
Joey Logano in the 20 car will start on the pole for this afternoon's NASCAR Nationwide Series race. Pretty good right now in this practice. He is 10th overall in his Toyota.
Here's his crew chief, Greg Zipadelli. It's actually somewhat of a home game for both of these guys. Greg Zipadelli's from the New England area, as well as Joey Logano, born and raised in Middletown, Connecticut. So a home game for these two guys here. He made his very first career Sprint Cup Series start here back in September. Started 40th, qualified 32nd. I was talking to Greg Zipadelli about that yesterday. He said, oh yeah, I told him forget everything you learned that weekend. You know, not long ago we were looking at Bobby Labonte, and he's one of the fastest Fords right now, 8th quickest. He was the fastest Ford in that first practice session too, 15th quickest.
Logano 24th in points, and talked about Reed Sorensen in the 43. He was fastest in the first practice, and you know what, boys? He's backing it up. 3rd overall right now in his Richard Petty Motorsports Dodge.
Well, it's been a good track for him. He has 6 starts here. He had 3 top 10 starts, and he finished 6th here 1 year ago. So he's had good runs here at this racetrack. Making his 125th career Sprint Cup Series start. Made that last week at Infineon. You can see the RPM band that they go through here. They fall down, you know, well around 5,500 all the way up to about 94 or 9,500.
All the way up close to 10,000 right there.
And 153 miles an hour off into the corner. On old tires.
And blue brakes.
And blue brakes.
Oh, Lord.
Hey, I want an
text
answer.
message
I
coming
want
my
an answer.
way.
Twitter. Joe Nemechek was quick in first practice. Among the quickest, 16th overall right now. Martin Truex Jr. still the quickest, followed by Jimmy Johnson, Reed Sorensen, then 3 more Chevrolets, Mark Martin, Kevin Harvick, and Juan Pablo Montoya.
AJ. And don't mean AJ Foyt. AJ Allmendinger in the 44 car, another Richard Petty Motorsports car.
You know, something interesting, you see on the quarter panel there, it says Berlin City Auto Group, and that's an auto group that's owned by actually George Gillette, that owns Richard Petty Motorsports along with Richard Petty, and they were a longtime sponsor. This is a name from the past, Steve. They were a longtime sponsor of, remember Dave Dion?
Yeah,
that used
one of
to
the Busch
run
North drivers.
Busch North. They were a longtime sponsor of Dave Dion, and they've got it on the quarter panel here this weekend.
I'm gonna go on a streak now. You thought I was naming off old Nationwide drivers. Dave Dion, Jamie Aubie, Stub
Beaver
Fadden,
Dragon.
Beaver Dragon, Robbie Crouch, Dale Shaw. Ha!
That's way back in the archives. Way back.
Rewind the tape.
AJ Allmendinger's 27th quickest. He's run a total of 13 laps. What a great recovery he made last week at Infineon. At one time, he was 1 lap down, and AJ ended up finishing 7th.
Mike Stefanik.
Sam Hornish Jr., 2 starts here at Loudon in the 77 car.
Kip Stockwell.
You're not going to let him get off on that tangent, are you, Larry?
He opened the door.
I know.
Yeah, but there was a reason I opened the door.
Busch North driver.
Hornish is 25th quickest. Ralph, can you update us on anything?
Jamie Aubie.
Dale Quarterly.
Attaboy, Ralph.
Yeah.
You're in.
The only Busch North driver to also win an AMA Superbike race in Mid-Ohio. How about
Sweet.
that? Okay, let's talk about Carl Edwards for a second on the number 99. Buried in 35th on the speed chart. Not where you would expect to see this team. Tight in the center of the corner is what Carl Edwards is trying to deal with right now. Bob Osborne down here pouring over the data. This team trying to figure out what they can do to get Carl Edwards to the front of the pack.
Well, it's what I talked about at the top of the show. This type of racetrack in the beginning of 2009, whether it was a 1 mile flatter tracks or the short tracks, that seemed to be the tracks that the Roush Fenway group could not get their arms around.
Well, I know they hadn't really put down a really fast lap, but you would think that the 16 of Greg Biffle, who's 17th right now, and he's made some long runs. He was looking pretty sporty at one time. Kenseth, he's over there a little bit better than the 99. You would think that those guys would be able to put their heads together and come up with something to get this program kind of turned around as far as Roush Fenway is concerned.
Yeah, Jeff, when I look at the best 10-lap averages, the best 15-lap averages, goes back to what we've been seeing as far as the fast lap. The only Ford that's there is Bobby Labonte in that 96 car.
Well, Matt, Martin Truex Jr. hasn't had a top 10 in 5 events, but he's looking pretty quick right now.
I think his father, Martin Truex Sr.,
yes, excellent,
who used to run in the
Busch
NASCAR
North.
Busch North Series,
That's right.
would love to see a win here at New Hampshire, a track that he raced so many times on back in his driving career. But right now, his son, you heard him talk earlier about how he was slamming the nose down and bouncing between the bump stops, making the front loose grip. They've been working on that. Martin has actually worked on that inside the race car, making some turns in the brake bias to try to change the balance of the car. The last time in, they made a track bar adjustment. He is still fighting, trying to get that car to cut to the center of the corner. Still tight, but he's still P1 in the 1 car.
It just sounds like everybody's fighting the same thing. Getting the car to rotate and turn in the middle of the corner and have good forward bite, good grip off the corner. And speaking of Martin Truex Jr. and the Truex family, congratulations to Ryan Truex. Martin's younger brother finished 2nd in the NASCAR Camping World East race last night. But more so, congratulations to Matt DiBenedetto, driving for Joe Gibbs, that won that race last night.
Matt Yoakum all over. Martin Truex Sr. won here, 1994.
I thought that was a note, something about blue rotors.
Nope. Truex Sr. Tonight on Speed, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series trades paint in Memphis as Ron Hornaday, Matt Crafton, Todd Bodine, and Mike Skinner battle for the points lead. That's 5:30 from Memphis tonight on Speed.
I'm going to rough you up in Memphis.
What?
That's right. They don't play nice.
Looking at Brian Vickers in this 83 car. Brian not that great in the first practice session. He was 32nd quickest. I was looking for him on this
Just
practice sheet
33rd,
here,
Larry.
33rd. So a little bit of struggles with this Red Bull car.
And again, qualifying rained out yesterday, so they do line up by points, which means Vickers will start 17th. Elliott Sadler slows going into turn 3, and he had a top 10 finish as well. 3 of the Richard Petty Motorsports drivers in the top 10 in Sonoma last weekend.
Look at the number of laps he's running this practice and where he is as far as the board is concerned. I don't think he's very happy with his 19.
Now this is a car that I would expect to have an awfully good run here. Denny Hamlin in the 11 car. Right now Denny's 20th quickest. He's run a total of 22 laps. He has the 1 win here back in July of 2007, and in 6 starts, 5 top 10 finishes.
Comes here 7th in championship points as we go on board.
Talking about laps, so far Tony Stewart's run the most laps in his practice session at 32, followed by Kurt Busch with 30 and Jimmy Johnson with 30.
Yeah, you talk about him coming here 7th in the points, Steve. I think they feel like they finally stopped the month of June bleeding when they finished 5th at Infineon, and that's their 2nd consecutive top 5 finish. Had a top 5 at Michigan, but boy, early June, late May was dismal for this group.
Yes, 6 straight weeks without a top 10 finish. Highly unusual for that race team and Denny Hamlin.
And Steve, you made mention highly unusual. There's a lot of things that are unusual about this year.
You're exactly right.
Denny Hamlin struggles, Dale Earnhardt Jr. struggles, even Carl Edwards has struggled. I mean, it's kind of like the expected is totally the opposite.
Why do you, Jeff, do you think that might be in part due to the fact that there's no testing this year?
You got to almost give it. Yes, you got to say that because of the fact you've got nothing else to contradict that, because who would ever believed that a guy, when you think about Mark could have won 3 races this year, but I think this is where Mark's experience and his open-mindedness has really worked well for the 5 car. I mean, he's just went in there and really kind of fell into that program over there. And I think sometimes, you over-engineer certain things and you look for testing to maybe bail you out, and you don't have experience to fall back on. It could very well be.
Look at Jeff Burton here in this 31 car. Boy, this racetrack is awfully special to Jeff. He has 28 starts here. He has 4 wins, the most of any driver. And in the September of 2000 race, he led all 300 laps. Plus, He made his very first career start here back in July of 1993, the first time we raced the Cup cars here.
And I believe that was with Phil Martaz.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. And Jeff has a birthday on Monday. He'll turn 42 years old.
99 car, Carl Edwards is right there. It goes to the underneath side of the 31 off of turn 2 and says, see you later.
Yeah, Jeff has run a total of 31 laps. And the way he drove by Jeff Burton, you almost get a feeling they may put some fresh tires on that 99 car. But Jeff, I'm pretty impressed with this tire. A lot of our guys ran in the high 29-second bracket as their fast time, and it looks like to me 30s, 40s, even some 20s and teens. Not a lot of give up with this tire.
Not a lot of give up.
Jeff Burton dropped out of the top 12 in points after finishing 34th at Sonoma. He's 15th right now. But he's looking to get healthy here in New Hampshire. Stay with us. Jimmy Johnson, second quick in his Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolet. Mark Truex Jr. has still laid down the quickest lap. Johnson working on his 40th lap of practice here in final practice.
If they don't run good tomorrow, it will not be from lack of practice, I promise you. Because they're getting towards about 150 laps of practice total this weekend.
Just a little minor test session there for Chad Knaus and the boys.
I would say you are right.
Jeff, you were talking about unexpected teams. This is one that I think has been unexpected in a bad way. They a lot of expectations for that team, and they just are struggling. There's no other way to say it.
And again, you go around and you look at the guys who are struggling, and you wonder, what can they do to turn it around? What are they doing wrong? And if you knew the answer, I can tell you right now, you can make a lot of money down that garage area.
But just think about 2008. Just think about how strong Roush Fenway as a company was. Carl Edwards won 9 races. You know, Greg Biffle starts the chase off with 2 wins. This kid here barely misses making the chase. Obviously, you look now, Roush Fenway, they only have the 2 wins, which were 2 big wins, the first 2 races of the year with Matt Kenseth, but it's almost like Roush Fenway's not performing as well, and certainly it's reflected in this 6 car with David Reagan, who they actually just made a little bit of a temporary crew chief change over there. Chris Andrews, the engineer, is going to kind of look after. I think Jimmy Finney's still going to call the race.
Yeah, they're trying something different, trying to find some chemistry to make something happen. Same thing here with the 26 car, Jamie McMurray. I think everybody expected bringing Donnie Wingo back into this organization, part of the organization, would be able to bolster the win output as far as the 26 is concerned. But right now they're 33rd on this practice chart. Again, another one of the Roush Fenway cars that's not having the kind of performance that we were expecting.
Right. And we say that only based on their performance.
Yeah, we're just what we're seeing, and you know, we're surprised. I mean, here's another one, a big surprise. Kevin Harvick has been so good in recent years. To find himself struggling as far as the points are concerned is always, you know, it's kind of like, what's going on here? They're starting to turn things around. We talked about Casey Mears. In this practice session right now, Kevin finds himself 5th quickest, and he's run 30 laps of practice. So, you know, maybe they've kind of, you know, made the corner, and they're going to start improving as far as the performance of this car, get it more competitive.
Watching Dale Earnhardt Jr. here, the 88 car, he's run a total of 24 laps. He's 30th quickest. But yeah, I think a good benchmark for how the 29 team is when you take Kevin Harvick to a Phoenix, a Richmond, or a Loudon. This has been a good racetrack for Kevin Harvick, and when you come and struggle, I think that was what the straw that broke the camel's back earlier in the year. The reason Richard made the crew chief swap is how bad Kevin ran at Bristol and at Phoenix.
Yeah, 2 racetracks where he is normally a guy you say who's got a chance of winning this race. Automatically Kevin Harvick's name would come on top of the list, but they really were. They were not even close to being a factor at either one of those races.
Matt, what's going on with Dale Earnhardt Jr.?
Steve, back on the racetrack, he's already completed 25 laps during this practice session. He is still stuck on the right side of the board. He is currently 30th fastest. One comment that he made to Lance McGrew and the crew members on the 880, he said, I can charge the corner, but then we just have to make up so much more time in the center. He also made one suggestion that he wanted to try with the left rear, but he says the car is just way too tight later in the run in the center of the corner.
And that will absolutely just destroy you here as you get in late into a run. the car getting tighter and tighter because it's going to. You're burning the fuel load off. It's gaining nose weight. So you almost have to start a runoff here. I won't say loose, but a little bit on the free side with fresh tires and a full load of fuel.
And Larry, I know that the comment he made, or to Matt made, was he's charging the corner. I know for a fact you can't charge the corner here at this racetrack. It will get you in more trouble than you can get out of. It'll make you chase things in that race car that you'll never get fixed.
Well, this is where we used to hear that expression from you crew chiefs, float it in.
Float it in.
Back the corner up a little bit.
Slow down and go fast, driver, if you want to go somewhere.
Help me, help you.
Forward bite. 45 minutes into this practice. See Robbie Gordon in the 7 being challenged by Clint Boyer in the 33. Boyer 11th fastest.
I believe this old 33 car, Steve, I believe he's going to be pretty good tomorrow. You know, we've been watching our averages of 15 laps. He's second quickest on that, third quickest on the 10-lap average. It's been a good racetrack for Clint.
Talked about teams putting a lot of laps on the race car. Kind of surprising. Big names there at the top.
Well, not surprised with that 14 car because we certainly know that he did not get many laps in that particular car yesterday. About halfway through that practice session, Tony got in the wall down in turn 1 and 2. They had to go to a backup car. So really, their weekend with that car, for the most part, just started today.
And Steve, again, I think what's so important, again, as we take a look at the 48 car, one of the guys who's run a lot of laps in this practice session, they're wanting to make sure. They need to know. And the only way you can find out is you've got to put on a set of tires, or you've got to run a set of tires 30 or 40 laps. Because we're going to go back and remind you one more time, track position. If your car's not good enough to get up front and stay up front, you will not have a successful outing here. And that's the reason why you talked about statistics. What was it? Out of 28 races, we've had 18 different winners here. And it's all because, you know, you make a mistake by not getting your car the way it needs to be. You assume, I'm fast. I can run that fast lap. Winning here is not just a fast lap. Run that long run.
Jimmy Johnson still second quick to Martin Truex Jr.
And you know, sometimes it's not because you've got a fast car. Sometimes it's not because you have a car that's good on the long run. Sometimes it's because you have good strategy, just like this 2-car in Kurt Busch.
You mean like a smart crew chief?
Yeah, and Pat Tryson did 1 year ago. You know, they actually had a decent race car, but it was not close. I know Kurt seems to think they had a car good enough to win. I don't think they did. But when the rain started moving in, they elected to stay out. They called the race, and they went to victory lane.
Smart crew chief.
That makes a big difference.
Okay, y'all stop patting yourselves on the backs.
Well, I mean, you know, every now and then we gotta get lucky. You know what I'm saying? You can't do it without having a good race car driver, but a good race car driver is not very good without a very good crew chief.
And vice versa, exactly.
They complement one another. It's like salt and pepper, baby.
Kurt Busch won both races here in 2004, also won, as we said, 1 year ago. Jimmy Johnson won both races here in 2003. Juan Pablo Montoya, 6th overall in this practice.
And when they unloaded yesterday, this was absolutely about the worst race car here. And by the time that practice was over, they had worked their way well up into the top 5, top 10 with that car. In fact, he ended up 3rd quickest when it was all said and done. So it just looks like 7th quickest in the first practice, that the momentum for this 42 team at a lot of different racetracks, when he finished 6th last week, that was his 3rd consecutive top 10 finishes, and they bumped into the top 12 for the first time. It looks like that the momentum, the confidence is just rolling right in here this week.
Well, the thing I was going to say about that is that yesterday in that practice session, remember we went down and we took some shots from around the race car? Brian Patty, Juan Pablo Montoya, they were having fun.
They were laughing.
Getting that car, you know, dialed in, even though they were kind of like in a pressure situation. Their car wasn't very good right off the truck. They didn't panic. They didn't get mad at one another. They went to work, They started making it better and better and better. Now today, they have definitely got a car that can be a contender tomorrow. I think it could be a really great run and great opportunity for Juan Pablo and that 42 to go ahead and get themselves up deeper in that top 12.
Matt, what's the update on the 47 of Marcus Ambrose?
Crew Chief Frankie Kerr had the race car up on the scales for a considerable amount of time. They're not wanting to take a chance of forgetting any idea of making this race car better, and forget is the key word with this team this weekend. Reason being, Steve, on the way up here, this is one of the longer hauls. The primary truck driver, Brian McClure, they had stopped off at a truck stop. His backup driver was filling up the transporter with diesel fuel while Brian went inside to empty the waste can. The co-driver thought that Brian had climbed back into the sleeper and was going to sleep the next leg. The problem being, when Brian came back out, his transporter was gone. He had to hitchhike a part of the way back up here until he could catch up with some of the guys and get reacquainted with his teammates. But you know, lesson learned, always check to make sure you've got your co-pilot. Never ever leave your wingman.
Don't leave your wingman. Matt, but you remember, and you guys may remember this, you remember they did that one time to the legendary Junie Dunleavy? He got out of the truck stop, same thing happened to him. Junie Dunleavy, who used to own the number 90 car as far as the Winston Cup Series at one time, he got left in a similar situation at a gas station.
That's a great story. Not if you're the guy that got left. But
no. Hey, I hope nobody ever leaves you at a gas station, because I know what side of you I don't want to see.
Nope.
That would be bad.
Very bad. Points leader Tony Stewart in the 14 car. 14th overall in this practice. Let's take a look at what happened to him yesterday. We've talked about it. 36 minutes into practice, he hits the wall at about the same time Mark Martin does. Mark Martin's team able to repair that car. Not as fortunate. They go to the backup car for the Tony Stewart 14 team.
Yeah, this is the second time in 4 races that they've had to go to a backup car. They had to do it at Pocono 3 weeks ago. But the difference, and this is what we're trying to make sure everybody understands, at Pocono, it was after the field was set, it was after qualifying, going to a backup car per the NASCAR rulebook. They had to start the race at the rear of the field. That wreck happened halfway through the first practice prior to qualifying. Now the rule is, if you go to a backup car before qualifying, if you present your car for inspection for qualifying with the race engine, you're good to go. You're good to start the race where you qualify. They were right in the middle of changing that engine to put their race engine in, getting ready to go to inspection for qualifying. When the rains moved in, the field was set. Talked to John Darby this morning, competition director for the Sprint Cup Series. He said, we view it, the fact that they were going to present their car for qualifying with their race engine, so they will start this race on the pole.
Jeff, we were talking about surprises. I think a lot of people thought that Tony Stewart would do well, but I think that's been a surprise even more so how well they've done.
Well, we're not even the halfway point of the season. He's already won an all-star event. He's won a points race. His second team is in the top 5 as far as points are concerned, Ryan Newman. And the problem is, like he's 6th right now. I've been staying corrected. He slipped back one, I think, last week. But they've been up there in the top 5 in points as far as the team's concerned. But the more important thing is Ryan has also been in a position to win races along with Tony. Look how many second-place finishes Tony's got. Look what Ryan's done. This organization has really come together, and I think they have just excelled beyond everybody's belief. They thought maybe by the end of the year, second half of the year would be Tony's part of the season, but now he's made this 2009 basically his entire season so far, performing well on the track as well as off the track.
Ryan Newman and Tony Stewart both with 2 wins here at New Hampshire.
And Ryan's doing double duty here this weekend, but not what you think. Not the nationwide series. He's actually going to be running in the modified race, and he's actually driving for Kevin Mannion and Gary Putnam. Kevin Mannion, of course, the crew chief for Martin Truex Jr. And actually, Ryan won a modified race driving for those guys at New Smyrna Beach, Florida back in February during Speed Weeks.
And it's triple duty. Not here at the track, but he was in a wing midget last night
New Hampshire.
at Lee, New Hampshire, running it. So, I mean, he's been a busy little driver as far as this weekend's concerned. But, yes, he is running 2 events here and looked very good in practice this morning when I was watching. I was up here early in the tower. They were out there practicing modifieds. That number 7, NY, I believe, is looking pretty good.
Larry, can we go down the modified path now?
Like Reggie Ruggiero?
Jamie the Jet Tomato. Come on.
Oh,
I'm just going to basically the red car, the blue car, the white car, and the yellow car.
Ground pounders.
Now, if he wants to start talking about people from Alabama, I'm sure he'll bring up Red Farmer and Neil Bonnet and all those folks right there.
The Alabama game.
There you go.
Casey Kane, right now 14th quickest. He's run a fair amount of laps, 44 laps. I get a feeling they maybe put tires on this car just recently because the fastest lap of those 44 was 5 laps ago, 39 laps into this practice session for the 9.
See Allmendinger just in front of Casey Kane. Closing minutes of practice. Use it or lose it, boys.
Clock's running, boys. Let's go.
Tick, tick, tick.
The Biff, Greg Biffle, 3rd overall in this practice. Martin Truex Jr. posted the fast lap early. It was his 2nd lap. It's Jimmy Johnson and Biffle heading down the pit lane.
Now, I think what's happening, just like we were talking about Casey Kane, Greg Biffle just jumped up there. He's run 35 laps. His fast lap was on lap 33. So I think as we come to a close here, what a lot of teams are doing is taking everything they've learned, incorporating it into the car, 4 fresh tires, fill it up with fuel, go run until we see the red and black flag.
No, you're right about that, Larry. I think it's going to be somewhat confusing, but you've got to have a driver's input of how he's going to start the race tomorrow. If this is what we're thinking about doing, what does new tires do for me? What does the air pressure settings do for me? And how is it going to feel when they drop that green flag? So it's a great opportunity to kind of, like, you know, leave the track, go to your motor coach after this practice and have peace of mind.
David Stremme, 18th overall. It's Penske Dodge.
All right, while we're watching David Stremme, we were kind of waiting for Michael Waltrip in the 55 car to get back out on the racetrack. We only have about 5 minutes left in this practice session. I got all kinds of people in that garage area working on these
Cell
blue
phones
rotors.
blowing up.
I do. I've got Wendy Venturini, one of our speed reporters.
Yep.
She's down there. But what we have concluded, Jeff McChesney, who works with AP Brakes, which actually the 55 car are running the AP calipers and rotors. It's one of the companies that supplies the brakes to the Cup teams. What he has told Wendy is that everything looks good on that 55 car, that the reason we're seeing the blue and not the orange or the red, it's simply the pad material that they're running. It has nothing to do with heat. They're actually running pretty cool, Jeff told Wendy. So that's what's going on. I'm glad we can put that to bed before this broadcast is over.
I'm glad for you, Larry.
Instead of red hot, it's ice blue.
I don't know if I'd go there.
I just wanted to give you something else to kind of talk about. Or
I
work
can
on.
sleep tonight.
Wait, I smell NASCAR performance.
Yep. More information.
Make a note of that.
Inquiring minds
brakes.
want to know. Define and explain blue brakes.
It actually comes on at 8:30 p.m. tonight and 9 a.m. in the morning, but we will not be talking about brakes, Matt Yoakum.
And Larry Mack, I spoke with someone who's a corporate teammate, so to speak, to the 55, and they said the exact same story that you just mentioned on the air. The reason being the blue pad or the blue rotors on the 55, just the difference in makeup of those pads.
And there you have it.
I still say you should do a whole show on NASCAR performance. Get T.P. Barker on it just for next week at Daytona. Let's do it.
If T.P. Barker's going to handle it, we'll be able to do it maybe when we come back here in 10 weeks.
September it is.
Okay. We'll hold you to that. We'll make a note.
Kyle Busch, 11th overall. Let's see, Kyle's this is his 37th lap.
You can hear him say he's looser. Obviously, Steve Addington, they're working on things trying to make that car turn. You want it to turn. You don't want it to be loose.
5 car in the 5th position. Mark has 45 laps on this track, the Magic Mile.
This is the exact same car that Mark won Phoenix with, and this racetrack definitely has some similarities, but I think the biggest difference here this weekend that a lot of teams are searching with is the tire combination. The left side tire that we have here, it's the exact tire that we ran at Phoenix and Richmond on the left side, but the right side, this is the first time they've run it on the Cup cars. In fact, the left and right side combination we have here is what the Nationwide Series cars ran last week at Milwaukee.
Pretty good little battle going on here, Larry, between the 24 of Jeff Gordon and the 31 of Jeff Burton.
7 New Hampshire wins between them.
The battle of Jeffs.
8:30 tonight, and what time tomorrow?
9 a.m.
Got the DVR
right along
set.
with your coffee.
Love it. David Rudiman was third quickest in the first practice this morning. Right now, that 00 posted in the 9th position. 45 laps here on the Magic Mile for David Rudiman.
David just had a rough weekend last weekend in Infineon. Just cannot get his arm around the road courses. Ended up finishing 31st, but he's still in good shape. 10 races to go to the chase. 14th in the points, only 40 points out of the top 12.
I don't think he's going away.
Hadn't all year long, but,
Nope.
but you know, Steve, this is the 6th year of our chase format. And I just believe that this is going to be a dogfight for this top 12 all the way until the last few laps at Richmond that will dictate what our top 12 will be.
Well, here's a guy who hopes he will not have to worry about that. He's already hopefully locked into that top 12 because they've had such a great year so far. The 14 of Tony Stewart. And there's a sign that a lot of these guys and teams are looking for, the red and black signifying this practice session's ended.
You know, we've had 3 practice sessions, and they have really 2 practices today. They've been totally uneventful. Of course, yesterday, the incident with the 14 car and the 5 car were our 2 incidents.
A lot of activity there on pit road. Tire temps. Teams debriefing. The debrief starts. We take a look at the top 10 quickest laps in final practice.
You got to kind of tip your hat to that 43, Reed Sorensen. The last 2 practice sessions, that 43 has been up there among them. So being interested to see how it kind of plays out.
And that 48 car, he wins the award again for the most laps in that practice session. 61 laps. Kurt Busch ran 60 laps.
Juan Pablo Montoya, we talked about their team not happy at all yesterday, but they are now. Chad Kanowski's got a plan.
He says test session complete.
The taskmaster himself.
Let's take a look at the starting grid for tomorrow's race. And again, we line up by points. Qualifying was rained out yesterday.
Well, all I can say right now, when you look back there in row number 3, Carl Edwards, not very good in practice. May have gotten a gift. His car's not really worked hasn't been very fast since he got here. So maybe they can make some changes between now and drop the green flag to get his number 99 to go up front.
Well, Steve, we've been talking all weekend. I think tomorrow, of course, it'll be the 4th week of the new double file restart shootout style. I think this will be another chapter in the learning curve. The teams by NASCAR. I think the leader's choice is going to be huge tomorrow. I anticipate they will choose the outside line, trying to get that momentum through 1 and 2.
301 laps tomorrow.
You know, that's another thing we really haven't talked a lot about. Relatively a short race as for the Sprint Cup Series as far as miles are concerned. 301 miles tomorrow. Don't have a lot of time to get your car right. Maybe that's the reason for a lot of laps here today. Track position, you have to hold it when it counts toward the end.
It is a short race per a normal Sprint Cup Series race, but it's the perfect length race.
I like
more
the distance.
300-mile races.
Makes everybody get up on that wheel and get after it.
Regan Smith was not going to be in this show until the 64 car. Mike Wallace, they withdrew prior to the field being set. So Regan Smith, the 78, they will get the race.
Kurt Busch is the defending champion of this race. Greg Biffle won here in September. Tony Stewart's team making their notes, and the debrief will begin.
I think he's going to be just fine with this backup car.
What backup car? That there's just a race car. That race car, I don't know whether it's a backup or a primary.
But, you know, we were talking earlier, you know, I think this new car of tomorrow, and it's not new anymore, we're in the second full year of it, it helps teams have their backup car just as good as their primary car. Why? Because the cars are all essentially the same.
Let's go to Ralph Shaheen.
Well, Tony just crawled out of the car. Okay, how's the backup?
Oh, it's good. I think we've tried 3 totally different packages this session, so we got a lot done in an hour. Really proud of our guys on this Old Spice Office Depot team. I put them behind the 8 ball yesterday and created a lot of extra work for them, but I think they've done a great job, and makes me proud to have these guys on board.
Information's king for them right now.
Well, Ralph, as Jeff and Larry said, pretty much no such thing as a backup car. You may have favorite cars, but all those cars in the stable are good.
You know something else that I really like about Tony right now?
He's calm.
He's very calm, but yesterday when that happened, he manned up and said, look, I overdrove the corner, got in there a little too hot, slapped the wall. Even when somebody said, hey, was any oil on the track? No, I made the mistake, and he continues to congratulate his team, pick them up, and move forward. Sign of a great champion.
Look at there, the hands never lie.
Nope. Thanks for being with us for nationwide qualifying in both of these practices. Coming up, John Roberts at the speed stage after the break.